It's live. There we go. Mr. Patel, do you have evidence that Safe Supply isn't being trafficked or diverted to schoolyards?
I don't know how you would actually do that study because the Safe Supply drugs are not tagged, so there's no way of anybody knowing that a dilly bought by a school kid would come from a pharmacy
Traceability
or
on
not.
Safe Supply?
Sorry, couldn't hear you.
Would you support traceability measures on so-called Safe Supply?
No,
Why is that?
because it's a sinister entity. You're basically trying to govern somebody's autonomy. We don't do that for anything else. Why would we do it here?
Mr. Patel, has your program received federal funding through SUA? Okay. Annually?
I think it's a 3-year program right now, renewed on a 3-year basis.
I take offense to Mr. John's comment to you regarding the politicization of a Safe Supply and the opioid crisis. I do agree with you that we are seeing more of it. It is more evident. It is out in the open. Our communities, well, they look like war zones. And I thank you for telling this committee that, what the high is like for those that are addicted to these drugs, that they're chasing it all the time, continually chasing that high. It's why first responders say that if they attend somebody that is overdosed or OD'd and they administer naloxone or what have you, the person that comes out of that or is rescued is very angry. Oftentimes they come up swinging. But I would offer to you this, that why politicians and why it's become such a hot button topic is that since 2016, over 47,000 Canadians have lost their lives to overdose. We continue to spend a lot of money on programs, but we're failing Canadians. And that is why it is a hot button topic. We don't disagree with you and that more services should be there. At least on this side, we're saying we should do everything in our power to get people the help that they need. I think that is part of the testimony that you provided earlier on. Mr. Patel, what does primum non nocere mean in the Hippocratic Oath?
Do no harm.
First, do no harm. Is that correct?
Correct.
How do you square that as a physician providing Safe Supply to those that are addicted to drugs rather than trying to get them into help?
If I don't give them Safe Supply, they're going to die. Game's over.
Have you ever asked somebody on the street why or how they feel about living on the street? Because you said earlier on that you haven't asked that.
I have asked. Nobody actually aspires to live on the street. Nobody actually aspires to use drugs. It's a coping strategy.
Strategy for what?
All the trauma they've gone through in their life. For some people, they've lost a home because of interest rates, inflation. Other people have lost jobs. They end up on the street because there's no other place to go.
Or PTSD, struggling with PTSD, moral injury. I think Dr. Monty mentioned brain injuries as well, too. We see a lot of people that are struggling with traumatic brain injuries that end up on the streets, what have you. In my province, overdose is the leading cause of death for children aged 10 to 18. Were you aware of that?
I'm sure the statistics are correct, but no, I'm not.
One of the families that recently had a daughter that lost her life, their daughter was 13, just turned 13, living in a homeless encampment. You mentioned about autonomy, patient autonomy. Well, this family tried repeatedly to get their daughter, who was struggling with addiction, suicidal, into treatment, and was told by the health authority and those that were there, if she wants to kill herself, that's her choice. 13 years of age, just turned 13 years of age. I wonder how you feel about that.
I think the experience that her and her family went through was absolutely horrible and unbecoming of a healthcare system.
Thank you, Dr. Patel, and thank you, Mr. Ms. Goodrich, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to start out. So, Dr. Patel, you've raised the issue of how you don't have studies that prove that there isn't diversion, but you're saying diversion isn't a problem. How can both statements be true at the same time?
So it goes fundamentally down to why people divert. So people will divert predominantly because they don't have a place to stay, so they need a place to stay, they'll divert their drugs. They don't have food, they don't have shelter, they don't have hygiene. So that's a fundamental reason for a diversion. The people I look after are not going to Lisker High School and Rideau High School and selling drugs to high school kids. That's not value to them.
But that's not just the only diversion, and this is one of the big pieces we've been hearing, and there are countless articles that have been written on Ottawa propers and the Ottawa inner city health of those blocks surrounding the so-called safe supply programs where drug dealers go, they exchange fentanyl for these drugs, and then those drug dealers go and take them to the high school student, flooding the streets with these dillies and allowing people to have these take-home is creating chaos. Sandy Hill is not a safe place to walk. And I'm very curious how you can say that your clinic and diversion has nothing to do with the lack of safety in that community.
So I fundamentally disagree with the inference that safe supply is the primary driver of chaos, as you call it, on the street. The fundamental driver of chaos on the street is the type of drugs that are actually available on the street. Treating a fentanyl and crystal meth problem with Dilaudid is like treating my arm that's being chopped off in a car accident with pediatric Tylenol. It's a fundamental mismatch. If we want to improve what we're doing, then there are different ways to do it. Fentanyl, actually providing fentanyl to patients would be, the kinds of people likely, would be one alternative. So if you have that, then you're going to see what
Dr.
you call
Patel,
chaos.
You are an advocate of having fentanyl available in a so-called safe supply program.
I am an advocate of doing that because it'll save lives.
So my next question is, I see that yesterday, in fact, you guys had an extension to your guys' clinic for an additional 3 years as per Health Canada. What consultation and communication have you had with the surrounding community in regards to the clinic's operation?
I'm not sure I understand the question, forgive me.
Well, oftentimes there's a communication with your neighbors when you're operating something. There's increased crime. There's tons of reports of increased crime. Have you had any conversations? Was there any requirement by Health Canada to have community consultation to make sure that public safety was being maintained?
There's no requirement from Health Canada, but we fundamentally, as an operating infrastructure, do consult with all of our community partners across the lower town and across the different shelters that we have across the city.
Okay, so Health Canada does not require you to have any consultation with community or take into account the public safety, the larger public safety risks when operating?
Not on a formal basis that requires any particular reporting that I have to do or my CEO has to do back to Health Canada.
That's incredibly troubling as we see so much crime happening in the very few blocks around your guys' clinic, and to know that Health Canada basically just gave you another rubber stamp to continue to operate for another 3 years without taking any additional measures into place to ensure that diversion isn't happening, to ensure that public safety is being put front and center so that kids aren't being put at risk. I really do not understand how Health Canada is doing its job and not doing those kinds of things. All right, so my last question, I guess, is to Dr. Ghosh. Are you familiar with recovery-oriented housing solutions like Oxford House?
I am, yes.
Do you believe that recovery-oriented housing solutions similar to Oxford House are a good model to get people housed and break the cycle of addiction?
I do. So Oxford House is essentially a high level of supportive housing. And it is an equity-based supportive housing facility as well, meaning that it is public, paid for by the government of Alberta, which is one of the points I wanted to make earlier was that the government of Alberta has provided access to these services for free. So the key to Oxford House is that it helps build community. They are long-term treatment facilities in the sense that it's not just 3 weeks that people spend there, it's not just 6 weeks people spend there, but they can spend a long time in these facilities. And we know that the longer they spend in these treatment facilities, the better their overall outcomes will be post discharge from these services. The other benefit to Oxford House is that they also provide transition services back into the community, which we also know is another key evidence-based idea that provides increased support for the clients and now has has better outcomes as well in terms of recovery and a cessation of substance use and decreased relapse.
Thank you, Dr.
So
Roche.
Oxford House is a
Thank you.